Masters Week is finally here. We've got ourselves a big favorite at FanDuel Sportsbook for this one. Scottie Scheffler, plus 450 to win it over at FanDuel Sportsbook down in Augusta, but plenty of other contenders in the field for this week. We're going to break down the betting markets at FanDuel Sportsbook, break down what you got to know for Augusta, and let you know which golfers we are targeting in FanDuel DFS lineups as well. This is the Heat Check right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and FanDuel Research. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a managing editor of digital media for FanDuel Research, joined here as I am every Tuesday by Brandon Gdula. Check him out on Twitter at Gdula13. He is a senior managing editor for FanDuel Research. Brandon, you are back off of WrestleMania here for the Masters. Pretty fun week for you, I assume. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Cody Rhodes finished his story. That was great. Really the whole weekend. My wife and I did both nights of Mania, SmackDown and Raw, but then also the NXT show, which is like the WWE's third brand or like developmental brand. That was awesome. Crowd was hyped for that. I'm not like a big crowd guy, believe it or not. I know I give off like big crowd energy, but it's the kind of place I could be. So I was there for it. I got amped for it. It was really fun. And the fact that like you even asked me a little bit of like, you checked it out, it's hard like when you're in a bubble to really know like how popular something is, but we got some of that like kind of crossover casual appeal. And what better way to sort of parlay that than to talk about the 1 week of golf where we get that of like, hey, what's going on with Phil this year? What's up with Tiger? Like this is the time where people ask those questions. So going back to back between these 2 weeks feels like for two of my niche interests, I would probably say golf is relatively a niche interest. It's kind of my sweet spot here.
Do you have a favorite moment from the weekend?
I mean, the easy one is the main event of night two with Cody Rhodes getting the win with some help. That was just phenomenal. But booing the Rock Monday night. Thought I was going to lose my voice. So thankfully I didn't, because I have to do this podcast, but also another one with you.
Yeah, we do have, as you mentioned, covering the spread tomorrow, full betting breakdown of the Masters, but glad you made it back in one piece. Glad you had a blast. A fun event that lived up to the hype. Can't really top that. So I was interested just because like I wanted to see, you talked about it a lot, but also it seemed kind of interesting. So I did check it out. I tuned in after the finale thing, like Cody Rhodes is hugging Triple H, so I missed like the fun stuff, but I was happy. I knew you kind of wanted that outcome. So I was still glad to see it. I saw a lot of Twitter clips after, so I think I got enough of a rundown. It seemed like it was a blast, so glad you were there to experience it all. Big week for this week here on the show, as you mentioned, not just breaking down top bets and DFS plays today here on the show, but also tomorrow, a further in-depth betting breakdown with the two of us over on the Covering the Spread podcast feed, breaking down more group level stuff, breaking down some round one bets and stuff and all of that. So we'll give you like outrights, finishing position, all the basics you want. We're going to cover on the show here for today from a betting perspective, but then some more granular stuff tomorrow too over on the Covering the Spread podcast feed. So these podcasts can both be consumed and still get new information over there as well. So that's on the Covering the Spread podcast feed. Both these shows on the FanDuel YouTube page and on FanDuel TV Plus. Of course, if you want to check out FanDuel TV Plus, watch Up and Adams, Run It Back, The Ringer shows, Covering the Spread, Heat Check, Solo Shot, Daily ISO, all in the same place. Go to FanDuel.com/watch and log into your FanDuel account, or download the FanDuel TV Plus app on Amazon Fire, Apple TV, or Roku devices. The first major is a tradition unlike any other, and FanDuel is giving new customers an offer unlike any other to celebrate. Because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed with any $5 bet. That's $150 to use on outright winners, round leaders, longest drives, and so much more. Plus, you'll get paid instantly when you bring home a major win this major season. So don't wait. Visit FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook and swing for some greens at Augusta. Must be 21 plus or 18 plus in DC and present in select states. First online real money wager only. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Restrictions apply. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino LLC. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit FanDuel.com/RG in Colorado, DC, Iowa, Kentucky, Michigan, New Jersey, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Tennessee, Vermont, and Virginia. They keep changing the order, and I keep messing it up. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT-STEP to 53342 in Arizona. You leave, but some things do stay the same, Brandon. 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut. 1-800-9-WITH-IT in Indiana. 1-800-522-4700. Visit chaosgamblinghelp.com in Kansas. 1-877-770-STOP in Louisiana. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. 1-800-GAMBLER.net in West Virginia. 1-800-522-4700 in Wyoming. Hope is here. Visit Gambling Helpline ma.org or call 100-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Let's dig in now to the Masters and talk about Augusta. You know the courses as always, but we do want to break down what you need to know about this course for this week. It is, of course, at Augusta National, 7,555 yards in a par 72. There are 89 golfers in the field. The top 50 plus ties make the cut here after the first 2 rounds. There was previously a 10-shot rule in place, but that is no longer there. So just the top 50 plus ties will make the cut after the first 2 rounds. So Brandon, we kind of know what to expect from Augusta because we talk about it every single year. But for those maybe betting on golf for the first time or playing DFS for the first time, what should we be emphasizing for this week?
Simplify it. It's a major, so everything matters. It's just anytime we get a major or a really difficult field, you have to pretty much do everything well. But especially at Augusta, there's kind of one stat where you can be lacking, and it's driving accuracy. And a big reason for that is the fairways are wide, over 50 yards on average, according to Data Golf's course table. That's like 85th out of 88 courses in terms of width, and it's not super penalizing to miss the fairways here, but it's long. It's about 250 yards longer than the average par 72. I've changed that number around a bit because my sample was a little outdated, and then I kind of updated it, but it just also depends on like how things get measured every now and then.
I think they also lengthened one of the holes by 10 yards or something like that.
It's possible.
There was a very dramatic shift. 10 yards, huge difference.
I try not to I know we want to get every sort of edge we can.
It's not going to change things too much.
I get being reactive and trying to get out ahead and think about things differently, but golf's volatile, and I don't want to get into the weeds to that degree, especially because we kind of know, like you said, by now what matters at Augusta, and you have to hit your irons well, which is strokes gain approach. Maybe people were listening, like you said, who don't really watch golf, follow golf. Strokes gain approach is effectively your iron play, and it's a very critical stat. Week in, week out, it's the one where you gain or lose the most strokes, aside from putting, in a particular week. But Augusta National, you need to hit these greens. These greens are a little bit larger than average. They're like just under 6,500 square feet. PGA Tour average is around 6,000. So they're definitely not small, but they're also not like really large. And one thing while we're talking greens, first week of the year with bent grass greens, I'm not doing a whole lot with that information. I don't look at putting splits like I used to on surfaces, but for anyone who does, that's an angle to play, this week if you want to. But, winning scores, 12 under, 10 under, 10 under, 20 under when it was held in the offseason, or I guess in the fall, just to clarify, and then 13 under. So, it's not a birdie fest by any means. It's going to be a pretty grueling test. So going back to the key stats this week for me, strokes gain approach, strokes gained off the tee, but with an emphasis just on driving distance. With the caveat, again, for people, how do I implement things like driving distance? Well, you can look at things like rankings, sure, but sometimes there's about a 3 yard difference between golfers with like 15 spots different in their rankings. So it's a little bit tricky. But you basically want to kind of maybe be a little bit wary of the really short hitters and maybe bump up some of the really long hitters. That's kind of, I think, what the real takeaway is in that instance. And then really to finalize, like I want total strokes gained. I want it all. I want good form. Data Golf's true strokes gained query is pretty invaluable at this, especially for these majors with newcomers or returnees to the fields that we dissect from the Live Tour. Data Golf gathers all that info. They adjust for field strength. So total strokes gained, I think, is probably not a bad way to go for it this week. And then we don't look at course history a ton. We talk about it. It helps, but at Augusta National, it's the most important that we get all year. So I'm kind of factoring in way more things than normal, but to simplify what I'm looking for is approach, off the tee, around the green, putting. Those are the big four strokes gained stats, a little bit of driving distance, and then course history. So I want it all. And if you're really weak in certain areas, the only place I'm willing for it to be weak is driving accuracy for the most part. So,
And I think that one thing to emphasize here is because accuracy doesn't matter here, we can sometimes get the misconception that we want to sell out for bombers. And I think that is a misconception. I think it really is about, we're looking at all at the tee play emphasizing distance, but it's really about all around play versus selling out for distance. And there are guys who are not super long off the tee who can still be pretty strong here and have good course histories. Like back when Matt Fitzpatrick wasn't long off the tee, he still played really well at Augusta because the rest of his game was so good. So I think it's important to kind of emphasize that even though we're not going to look at accuracy, it's not just a bomber's paradise kind of thing. You want the all around play. And if you're looking at off the tee play, you emphasize distance, but you don't just like say, okay, sort by distance and go from there. I think that's an important thing to know because I think that sometimes you can see that discussion around Augusta, and I don't think that plays out in the data.
yeah, there's more to golf than distance. Distance is a massive factor. But the reason that someone like Bryson DeChambeau or Wyndham Clark
I'm wearing my
are
Wyndham shirt today, by the way. This shirt kind of has like some weird, like it's black with some weird texture on it, which looks a lot like Wyndham's old player headshot. Actually, it's his current one too. Over at FanDuel. So actually it's not really that black, I guess. But it's still like this is my Wyndham shirt. So I've got it on. I'm not using him, like not high on him this week for DFS or for betting, but I did have to rock the Wyndham shirt regardless. I want that exact shirt though. We can make that happen somehow.
I would never wear that shirt in a million years.
Vacation Jim would. Vacation Jim don't care, and he would. Like work Jim, I'm gonna go with like the fake Wyndham shirt, but either way. Other thing to emphasize that you alluded to is course history adding a bit more. And speaking to Wyndham Clark, it is important that we do want to be, I guess the way I'd phrase it is skeptical of people playing here for the first time. Wyndham Clark is one of them, just because course history does tend to matter a lot here. So I think that I'm phrasing it that way intentionally, where you don't cross off guys who are playing here for the first time, but if their salary is 10-6 and they're like 22-1 to win, I'm going to need a lot of stuff working in their favor to get on board with them for this week.
Yes. So to finish my thought about Bryson and Wyndham before we talked about Wyndham's shirt, the reason those guys are good and they're major winners is because they're long off the tee, but they're also good at other things. There are certain golfers who hit the ball a mile and don't do a whole lot else. And sometimes those golfers can show up like Cameron Champ at Augusta historically, something like that. But yeah, it's not a who hits it the farthest wins situation. There's way more to Augusta National than that. So I agree there. And to go back to the debutante angle, again, datagolf.com, they have a course history tool. They show where course history is the most predictive. It's basically the Augusta National scale. It's like twice as predictive as any other course on tour. Now, part of that is because you get a lot of the same golfers playing it a lot, and so that helps with the sample. But it also just is basically a reminder that the best golfers are the best golfers as a sample grows larger, which makes sense, and that's what you want to see. But as far as like, it always comes back to the, okay, first timers haven't won here in forever, basically. But that's not to say that they can't play well or finish well. So someone like Wyndham or Ludwig this week, very interesting, hard to model because if I keep my traditional model situation, it doesn't have like anything built in where it says this is the first time they play, their win probability is 0.
Yeah.
You can't do that.
Right.
So they're really fascinating this week with as far as like the debutantes go. It's the only week of the year we can say that word, but it's a piece of the puzzle. It's definitely not all of it. And just because someone's played well here and maybe they're in bad form doesn't mean I want to roster them or bet them. So
Well, if course history matters more, let's dig into that right now and talk about golfers who have done well at Augusta. And like you said, it's kind of just a list of all bangers all the time. Who stands out when you look at past history at Augusta National?
John Rahm is. So I look at the past 5 years. I don't want to look past that really. His salary is 12,200 on FanDuel this week. And if you look at the betting board, which Jim has pulled up for anyone watching, I'm having a hard time, and I'm gonna just go on a slight like I'm gonna get derailed a little bit. Like John Rahm's 11-1, Rory's 11-1, Scottie Scheffler, as we already talked about, plus 450, and my guy Xander 14-1. But then it's Hideki and Brooks in the 20s. Like I'm assuming, like it's just because Scottie's playing as well as he is, but it almost and the fact that there are two major tours, it feels like the star power isn't quite what it used to be leading in. And I could be way off base in that, but like when I'm building a betting card or like lineups, I love Xander this week, but everyone else is kind of, and I love Scottie for DFS. Can't quite get behind betting him. I feel like I'm kind of low on everyone else, like a John Rahm or a Rory by default.
Okay.
Is that a bad viewpoint this week?
I don't think it's a bad viewpoint. It's not a viewpoint I personally feel, because if we go over to the DFS salaries on FanDuel, Scottie Scheffler's salary is 13. My mouth dropped when I saw that number this week. So $13,000 for Scottie Scheffler. Then it jumps down to Rahm at 12.2 and Rory at 11.8. So I actually do think those guys have value, because we talk a lot about having balance in a major field in DFS. It's hard to get balance with Scottie. Now, if you go Scottie as your top guy at 13,000, you still got 94 to left per golfer, and you can do that and have a balanced lineup, but it means it's just Scottie. You're not getting 2 swipes of win equity. You're getting 1. Now, the 1 swipe with Scottie might actually get you more win equity than getting 2 with like a Rahm plus a Xander or something like that. But it is different. So I actually think that Rahm and McIlroy are very interesting. I currently have Rory as a player pick. I am about 75% likely to change that to Rahm by the end of the show.
Okay.
The more I think about it, I don't know why Rahm's odds to win are the same as Rory's, given we have not, I think there's a wider range of outcomes on Rahm in a positive sense. So I have Rory as a player pick right now for DFS. I might wind up on Rahm just because he's more volatile in the positive sense. That's not really what you asked, but it was on my mind.
No, it's not. But before we get into everything, and there's a lot to talk about. We're probably going to go a little bit longer than normal, which just it's the Masters. But
yeah,
as I'm doing my notes, building out shells of lineups, looking at the betting odds, I'm kind of really overlooking, or I don't want to say overlooking, but like my process is not pointing me to Rory, not pointing me to Rom. And then after Xander, it's like a kind of a shrug as well, in a sense.
Yeah.
And I usually have a little bit more conviction, I
Yeah.
think, for the Masters. But the thing with Scottie, when we talk DFS, I have him more likely to win than like Rory and Rom combined.
I'm sure.
So
Yeah.
like, and those are the
And based on the
second,
implied odds in the market, the market says the same thing.
yeah. So like salary wise, Scheffler still makes sense to me, but
Yeah.
betting wise, it's interesting. But then you get to like get into Rom at Augusta. Uh,
Sorry,
what?
I got distracted because FanDuel has a note up here, which is good. They're noting the house rules within the thing, but it says any players who withdraw after completing at least one stroke are considered as players and therefore losers. And like the "and therefore losers" phrasing is amazing. So I don't know who's responsible for this, but they deserve a raise. And are therefore losers. Amazing. I don't know. I just got really distracted by that. And this is why we can't record in the afternoon. I just get distracted by "and are therefore losers." It's great.
Yeah. I'm still getting into the swing of things of recording later in the afternoon, but it's so that we can implement betting a lot
Yeah.
better to our typical show. And we have a specific betting podcast this week coming out for covering the spread, but it is a little bit distracting. But let's get back into the swing of things
Sure,
here,
if we have to.
if we have to. John Rahm, winner, 27th, 5th, 7th, and 9th over his last 5 starts at Augusta National. If you want to look at the current form, he's been T8 or better in 5 straight live events in 2024, which were his only starts in 2024. That's like a top 15, top 20, depending on the field you're comparing it to on the PGA Tour. So like a lot of top 20s or so if you're trying to compare it. Again, data golf, very helpful for easier comparisons in that sense, but he's golfing well. He's played well here. Doesn't have all the pressure that Rory's going to have trying to win the Masters again, or again trying to win the Masters. Yes. Sorry, Rory. I know you're a big fan of the show, but I do think that Rahm should be a smidge above Rory if I had to pick one. So I think I'm with you where by the end of the show, I would lean that way. But someone else who's played well here, one Scottie Scheffler. His salary is $13,000 on FanDuel, as we talked about, plus 450 to win on FanDuel Sportsbook. But 10th, 1st, 18th, and 19th, we know the form is on fire. That's why he is plus 450 to win the Masters, get his second win. I mean, the fantasy points, the finishes here in this player card are pretty wild. And his putting is definitely coming around since the switch too. So like, he's like who Dustin Johnson used to be effectively back when we really started podcasting. So it's but better in a sense. So Hideki Matsuyama, also great form at Augusta National. 11,100 is his salary. 16th, 14th win, 13th and 32nd over his last 5 starts at Augusta National. He's got 5 straight top 25s, including a win at the Genesis. Really good irons across the board too. So Hideki, actually someone we've been flagging in current form, who wasn't in great form, but now he's rounding back, which is very interesting leading into Augusta, where he's played well. But so is Xander Schauffele. He always plays well at majors, or virtually always. Did miss the cut 2 years ago, but 10th, 3rd, 17th, and 2nd for him in his other 4 starts. 4 straight top 25s, 7 of them in 8 starts since January 1st. Form's good. He's basically the best golfer in the field behind Scottie Scheffler, across any recent sample that you want to look at. Cameron Smith, his salary is $9,900, 34th, 3rd, 10th, 2nd in his last 4 starts. Did withdraw at Live Miami last week due to food poisoning. So just kind of wanted to shout that out. Was T2 in Hong Kong after a T41, T15, and T8 in 2024 on the Live Tour, which is not great. It's really hard to get good stats from the Live Tour, but Rick Gaiman at Rick Run Good on Twitter has posted some strokes gain stats. He's found a way to get strokes gain numbers for the Live Tour. So if you want to look at that, check out Rick again at Rick Run Good on Twitter. Dustin Johnson, shouted him out before in terms of like being phenomenal. It's been a while since we've seen that, but he did win here 4 years ago, and also had a runner-up before that, another top 15. But T5 in a win on the Live Tour in February, and then kind of struggling since then. T27, T27, T24. Again, not a full field, 3 rounds. It's tricky in that sense. But other Live golfers have played well here, which is why I wanted to cut this off sooner, but I think it's interesting. We don't talk about these golfers very often. Big P, Patrick Reed, 9,100 is his salary. 4th last year, 35th, 8th, 10th, and 36th. The form was really just okay to start 2024, but finished 4th on the Asian Tour in mid-March, T9 at Live Miami last week. It's sort of like if you look just at the Valera last week, it's like a T25 and like a T8 sort of equivalent. So good numbers there. But again, going back to those strokes gain numbers from Rick Gaiman, really riding a hot putter, hot short game. Ball striking's kind of bad. So
what's the narrative bump for Patrick Reed being back in Georgia, given his interesting collegiate career? Is it a bump up, or is it a Georgia revenge game against Patrick Reed being back in that state?
You're the narrative guy. You'd have to tell me.
It's a bump down. I wanted to ask you to give you the floor in case it was not the case, but it's a bump down. I just want to 91's not bad for a salary, but no.
Okay. You got any narratives on Brooks Koepka?
No.
Did switch to a mallet putter, which is interesting. I thought he'd never switch. Just seems like he would have powered through anything, but
Brooks is stubborn.
I don't know. Putting numbers haven't been great for what I can gather. Please don't quote me on that, because it's not a quote. That's just like, I think, trying my best. He hasn't putted well. We don't have great stats since the switch, but 2 runners up, a 7th, and 2 missed cuts over the last 5 years for Brooks. So, and he's not putting well. For him to switch putters, I think, is probably a sign. So that might be the best narrative. An 11-6. If I want exposure to Brooks, I'd probably just find a way to bet him or something. Yeah. But long-term data makes it hard to model him. So I'm not quite there. And then just quick shout-outs to some golfers with just 2 starts in the last 5 years. But Will Zalatoris, 6th and 2nd.
He's Baby Brooks. Shows up in the majors.
Okay.
I'm right.
I think he needs a couple more wins maybe before we. Okay.
No.
Didn't play last year with the back, but has played well here in his 2 starts. And then Russell Henley, 30th 2 years ago, but 4th last year. His salary is only 8,800. Just gonna let you guys know right now, and that Jim and I both like Russell Henley kind of a good bit this week. Yeah. So
Russell Henley rules. Happy to be there. Now, 2 guys I wanted to talk about a bit more are Hideki Matsuyama and Will Zalatoris, because as you mentioned, Hideki's form had been off, but recently it's been a lot better. We know the course history is good. Now, for guys whose form is trending up, that's a spot to buy low. With Hideki, we missed the window to buy low because he's getting a big bump due to course history. So where are you at with Hideki at 11-1? He's just above Xander in terms of FanDuel salary. He's 20-1, so longer than Xander as far as win odds. So how are you handling Hideki this week?
The salary's high. I would have a hard time getting to Hideki, frankly, in lineups, but I'm not going to like talk anyone. I guess this is really where when all the dust settles, when it comes to a major, you really got to see something in some of these top guys to say no, like flat out no. Hideki's been striping the irons. He's hitting his driver well, gaining distance, not substantially, but gaining some distance. the wedges for him are good, but he's a really good wedge player long term. And then it comes down to the putting. And he won the Genesis, putted really well, bookending that on either side of it, and then cooled off a bit. Let me see where he is. Hideki, 15th percentile putter on tour this season from within 15 feet. Don't love to see that. Kind of hate to see that, actually, but you're never going to get great putting splits on Hideki anyway. So it's fine. You know what you're getting into with Hideki, and you want him to ball strike it to the point where he just putts it slightly better than expected, and then you can go from there.
Now, with Zalatoris, he had those back-to-back top fives, but since then, things have fallen off a bit. One missed cut, and then one 2 weeks ago where he made the cut, but then didn't perform well. Both those bad putting weeks for Zalatoris. The approach play is still pretty good in both those. But again, it's not a low salary at $10,000. So what are your thoughts on Zalatoris this week?
So he's 29th percentile from within 15 feet this year. I still can't really look at Zalatoris and heavily buy into him as a putter. With that in mind, I get the case. But he's like putted well on these greens. Like, and then it comes down to like, does he putt well on these greens, or was it luck? Was it just variance that he putted well? I think he's fine.
Yeah. I think the big issue is the guys in his range are really good.
I was gonna say, who else do we have in that tier?
I'm going to scroll back down. Matt Fitzpatrick is 99. Love Fitz. Bryson DeChambeau, I think, is very interesting this week in 98. A lot of interest there, 98. Sahith Theegala, I think, is probably better for betting than for DFS. But like, is a guy I'm broadly interested in at 97. So like, I'd rather go Fitz at 99, rather go DeChambeau at 98. So, and like, I don't see value in Zalatoris for betting right now. So I love the Augusta form, and I love that he's spiked. I wouldn't be shocked if he does well, but I don't think I'll get there personally for this week. So let's talk some current form. Talk about golfers who are entering this event in good standing, and we'll check back in on some live golfers in this as well. But who's popped from a form perspective when you dig into the numbers?
Just for a quick Scottie check-in, over the last 3 months, he's at a plus 3.16 true strokes gain per round, with nobody else above a plus 2.50. So Scottie 316. I don't know. Austin 316. I think I'm going to play that narrative this week for DFS. But shout out to Xander, whose salary is $10,900. He is second in this sample over the last 3 months at a 2.48. And then Joaquin Niemann, a name we'll talk about more in a bit, 10,400. He's third at a 2.31. So I don't want this to get lost in that conversation, but Scheffler's basically a shot per round better lately than like everyone but two people.
Yeah. But also the guy who's third in that discussion is 28-1 to win this week.
He is, and
putting that out there.
Basically a upper mid-tier salary.
He's 10-4 on FanDuel, correct? Yes. Yeah. We will be talking about Joaquin Niemann later in several different sections.
Yes. And then the guy you did a heel turn on, I'll call it with the wrestling terms, but you turned on Wyndham, said you're not interested in him, but he's fifth in this sample.
Well, he's not 80-1. I can only use Wyndham when he's 80-1. He's 40. He's half. I can't do that.
We're never going to see that again. But
get the flow chart out, bud. Come on.
So the best form among golfers with a salary of 10,000 or lower on FanDuel over the last 3 months includes Sahith Theegala at a 1.78 true strokes gain per round. That's pretty high, like pretty elevated. I mentioned Niemann at a 2.31. It is a big gap, but like, just for context, he's been T20 in 4 of 6 starts with good irons. Usually the putting's there as well. He's got a really fascinating profile, quite volatile because he can hit the irons well or not. He can putt really well or not. Volatility, though, is not a bad thing in golf. Volatility affects everyone, and if you have volatility on the high end, like that's appealing. So
And was top 10 here last year as well.
yes, in his debut, solo ninth, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Sam Burns, kind of interesting. He's at a 1.76 in this sample, but he's tailing off. 4 straight top 20s with hot putting, but then since then, T30 at the Arnold Palmer, T45 at the Players, and then missed the cut at the Valspar. I always want to look more at Burns. Something about him just, I don't want to say he's like a Xander light, but he's easy to overlook. Doesn't like pop from a personality standpoint, really, but like tends to have good underlying data. I'm not quite there with him. I don't want to like bail too soon, but a 1.76 true strokes game per round over the last 3 months, 29 rounds for him. It's appealing. Do you have any thoughts on Burns?
I looked into him. I didn't quite talk myself into him personally, but like I definitely had interest. And like let's say I have $9,400 left. I might go Tommy Fleetwood over him, but like I'm not opposed to Sam Burns at 94, I guess, right?
Yeah, that's fine. I
Yeah.
think I like Tommy Ladd. I'll talk more about him later. Bryson DeChambeau, 9,800 is his salary. He's at a 1.65. 2 wins in the fall on the Live Tour, which is not factored into this sample, which is from basically early January. But 4 straight top 10s on the Live Tour. Sounds like you have some interest in Bryson.
Yeah, I think that he's one of the better plays in the upper 9,000 range. I like Fitzpatrick more. No shock to anybody who has ever listened to us. But I think DeChambeau's a rock solid number 2 for me in that range. How about you?
I don't know if I could, as far as like ranking that range goes, I do like Matt Fitzpatrick a lot. If I could bump up to like Colin Morikawa, I think he's fascinating this week at 10-1. He's played pretty well here despite not being long off the tee. But if I go like back down, I think the real question is, I guess like Bryson or Sahith. So yeah, he might be the second name there.
Behind
Boy,
Fitzpatrick?
that's a
Yeah.
really, this is my favorite part of the full golf season is when we get to these majors, because you gotta like do some tweaks to figure out, is it Cam Smith week or Dustin, or do I go up and like, hey, Patrick Cantlay, everyone's quote unquote forgetting about like Cantlay or
I
Justin,
am okay with
right?
that.
I don't see enough to discredit any of these names, but I'd say Fitz number 1 in this tier, and then probably Bryson or Sahith.
Yeah. I would do the exact same thing personally. I agree with that as well.
Although I am tired of Matt Fitzpatrick ruining all my spreadsheets.
I'm tired of Colin Morikawa ruining my lineups. So we're both dealing with something here.
That's fair. Matthew Pavon, 8,600. He's at a 1.59. He was 270 to 1 to win. Won the Farmers Insurance Open with really good irons and putting, but and then was solo third at Pebble the next week. Since then, things have fallen off pretty quickly. T28 at the Cognizant Classic, T41 at Arnold Palmer, missed the cut at the Players, 5th at the Porsche Singapore Classic. But even though we need value or are open to value, I don't think I'm there with Pavon at this point. Siwoo Kim, 9,300. He's at a 1.53. 5 top 25s in his last 7 starts and 6 out of 9 starts in 2024. Gaining approach every single event in 2024. I go back to that number with Scottie Scheffler. If you start your lineups, I think it was what, 9,400.
Yeah.
Like, you got your Sam Burns, you got your Tommy Fleetwood, you got your Siwoo Kim. It's, I don't really want Scottie in 5 of these names. Scottie in like 3 of these names and another value, and then go back up. I think that's appealing. So shout out to Siwoo Kim. Hopefully he can game with approach for another week in a row. And just above him in salary is Cameron Young. Irons are there right now. Solo second at Valspar. 3 more top 20s in his last 6 starts. Just, playing good golf. We know that he can definitely be in contention. Still need to see him close it out. He's probably like baby Xander if we're going to throw those out. And then Akshay Bhatia, 8,900. Don't think we'll get super popular, but boy, he made a statement this week. I did not follow golf a ton this weekend. I'll just be transparent. Had some other stuff going on, but
yeah.
coming off a win at the Valero, and other good finishes at the Houston Open, T11, Valspar T17, putting well. Irons are on fire though. The last 2 events, and he's young enough where these kind of small samples can matter. So, where are you with Akshay? Anything like enough to say, look, if I'm building one lineup, I'm considering him? How many lineups do you need to get to Akshay this week?
Probably not going to get there. He has a shoulder injury that he suffered right before the playoff. He obviously still won the playoff, so like he was fine enough to do that. But like when you combine that with the fact that it is, I believe this is his first time playing Augusta. Let me fact check that. We don't have interns to fact check for us, so we'll do it ourselves. Yeah, first time playing Augusta.
Yeah, sorry, I spaced out. I could have answered that quickly.
So first time playing Augusta combined with a question marks around the shoulder. I also do like some guys in this range. You alluded to Russell Henley before at $8,800. I'm probably going to go there over Patia, but it was really cool to see him. I was worried. I had some McCarthy DFS exposure, so it would have been better for me had he won that playoff, but I would have felt really bad if he had blown that lead. So I'm glad that he finished it. He finished his story as well. But I probably not going to get there for DFS for this week, personally. Weather for this week at Augusta is actually going to be annoying on Thursday, but not as bad as last year was. There's a good chance of rain early Thursday, which is probably going to cause some issues as far as tee times go. The wind will be high the entire day, both Thursday and Friday. So it already plays tough. It's probably going to play a bit tougher this week as a result of the wind the first 2 days. You could justify prioritizing golfers with certain tee times, hoping that they catch good wind gaps or catch some good rain gaps, but it kind of looks like everyone will deal with similar conditions. Lower wind on the weekend, no rain there. So I don't think any specific tee time will benefit from the weather, but just note that it will be a bit rainier on Thursday morning and likely windy for Thursday and Friday. Let's take a look now at the odds board over at FanDuel Sportsbook and outline our favorite bets at FanDuel Sportsbook for this week. Of course, Scottie Scheffler does lead the way. He is plus 450 at FanDuel Sportsbook. Brandon, you've already said you're not seeing a lot of value in Scheffler at that number. So where do you see value when it comes to outrights for this week?
I'm going to do it again. It's a tradition unlike any other. Xander Schauffele to win the Masters, 14-1. His odds they did lengthen very briefly to 16-1 today, if I am not mistaken. And then went right back down to 14. So
somebody's interested.
I don't think we're alone in that, but he just has a lot going on for him as usual. Over the last 50 rounds for every golfer across all tours, according to Data Golf, Xander owns a true strokes gained average of plus 2.37. It is 0.27 shots better than anyone other than Scottie Scheffler, who's at a 2.81. He's really good. He can get in contention. He can stay in contention. And I'm not a believer in the fact that Xander doesn't have the ability to close out wins. He has won on tour. He's been in this position a lot.
He's an Olympic gold medalist.
I think that's a lot of additional factors going against Xander to the point of he's getting unlucky. And I would rather have a golfer, frankly, who's in contention and not winning than someone who wins out of nowhere. So I'm good with this. My model likes it well enough. Even at 14-1, I would rather go Xander than Rory or Rahm at 11-1. Pretty comfortably, even though my model is relatively high on Rory and Rahm, just not quite enough to get there. But he is top 8. Xander, that is top 8 in all 3 of the tee to green stats over the last 50 rounds. He's 21st in putting. But over the 2024 PGA Tour season, Xander is in the 64th percentile on putting from within 15 feet, 23rd percentile on putts longer than that. So probably not getting a whole lot of luck on those lengthy putts. So regression could be coming for Xander. 14-1. He's played well at Augusta, was very much in contention against Hideki, and then kind of fell off because he got aggressive. But I'd rather see that than, not like just playing for second, basically. I also like Joaquin Niemann at 28-1. We talked about him and his form. We've had enough of a sample now of live golfers coming over and playing well in majors that I don't have that fear. I thought it was a reasonable fear. I don't think we need to have that at this point. And the data for Niemann, again, from either Data Golf, long term, shows that he is quite good. From Rick Gaiman, the strokes gain numbers showing that he is gaining a lot of strokes from approach and off the tee play. Love to see that. The one potential reason not to go fully in on Niemann is just that he's played the Masters 4 times, made 3 cuts, T16 last year, but didn't exactly light Augusta on fire in his starts. So maybe it's it seems like he should be a great course fit, but it doesn't see it that way or something. That's really all I got against Niemann, though. 28-1, very good number for Niemann, in my opinion. And then I was between a few other names, including Ludwig, but there's the debut angle. That's enough for me not to want to get there. Bryson. But I'm going with spreadsheet ruiner Matthew Fitzpatrick, 40-1, 2 straight top 15 finishes at Augusta, 8 consecutive cuts made dating back to 2016 at the Masters. Gain strokes off the tee, gaining with approach. He can gain distance. He's a really good putter, supported by good underlying stats. And he's got 2 straight top 10s that were centered on great putting, but the ball striking has been really good as well. So 85th percentile putter from within 15 feet. I'm not worried about putting luck or anything like that. Fitzpatrick to win, 40-1, I think will be my third name on the card at this point this week.
So we are in agreement on 2 out of 3, and the third one, which is Xander, which I don't have on my card here. I did bet at 16-1 earlier on this week. So I have bet all 3 of these guys, and maybe that's boring to be on the same dudes, but I feel like we're there for a reason. Let's start things off here by talking about my favorite outright, which is Joaquin Niemann, 28-1 to win for this week. And I feel like if Niemann were doing on the PGA Tour what he's done on Live, this number would be a lot shorter than what it is right now, because over at Data Golf and their True Strokes Gained query, Niemann ranks 3rd across the past 6 months, behind just Scottie Scheffler and Xander Schauffele, who are plus 450 and 14-1 respectively. And it's over a pretty large sample because he's played on the DP World Tour as well. It's an 11 event sample for Niemann in that time, which is more events than Scheffler, more than Schauffele, more than Jon Rahm. So it's a big sample of Joaquin Niemann playing tremendous golf. Yeah, the Augusta history is not perfect, but he was 16th at Augusta last year. He's improved in all 4 trips to this course, and clearly Niemann's form is at an all new level right now. The implied odds of 28-1 are 3.5%. So I think it's a great time to buy Niemann. I'm betting that in other majors this year, if he's there, we're probably going to see shorter numbers on Niemann as well. So I like Joaquin Niemann 28-1 as my favorite outright for this week. Once again, no shocker, I'm with you on Fitzpatrick as well. He was 35 at FanDuel. He lengthened to 40 and has not budged from there. I would have been okay with him at 35. I would take him at 40 earlier on this week, but I would take him at 35 too, personally, in case he does shorten once again, just because he actually does have the decent course history, a couple of top 10s at Augusta in his past. This will be his 10th time playing here, which is absurd given how young he is. He was 14th in another one as well. And a key thing for Fitzpatrick is that he's adding distance, because that was not part of his game previously. He's had good distance at Augusta, but in general, he's not been a guy who was going to gain yardage off the tee. but he is doing that now. The irons were awesome at the Players. He finished fifth there. He's already shown he can beat a major level field. He's a grinder who can do really well in these par fests and stuff like that. And he's not going to collapse under pressure. I know that's like narrative-y, but like he's proven it. Like that stuff does matter to an extent. I don't think that that's a negative for anyone. Like, that's not a negative for Schauffele. Again, I bet him at 16-1. But like, it's can only be a plus for a guy like Fitzpatrick, who's definitely proven that. So I've got Fitzpatrick 40, Neiman 28, and Brandon has Fitzpatrick 40, Neiman 28, Schauffele 14-1 is his favorite outrights for this week. What about non-outrights? Where are you seeing value there at FanDuel Sportsbook right now?
I wanted to get a Tommy Fleetwood. I think 50-1 outright is interesting, but I can't quite get there with the outright position. And that's okay by me, because even though he's on the cusp for outright value for me, those golfers aren't always like values at their current top 10 or top 20 numbers. And so I want to kind of lampshade that I like Fleetwood, but I can't quite get there currently. I right now have two top 20s that I like. First on Sahith Theegala at plus 160. Debuted last year at Augusta, 9th place for him. Gained strokes in all four facets, gained distance, gained fairways on the field as well. He's got that like high-end type of volatility that might make him sound like, why not go for a top 10? But I see the value in this field where things can get clustered to stick with a top 20, although 55-1 to win, partial unit, very interested in that as well. He can get really hot with the putter, but it's stabilized with 83rd percentile putting from within 15 feet. The irons can go. I think like I'm more than fine taking a chance on Sahith, and the data for me bears it out as well. And then Russell Henley as well, top 20, also plus 160.
I was ready to scroll, but then realized
I know. I was like confused. I was like, wait, are you scrolling? Because he's not there anymore. So it just gave me a little bit of pause. But fresh off a solo fourth at Valero, missed the cut at the Players, but was T4 at the Arnold Palmer Invitational. He's played Augusta pretty well. T4 last year. He's now finished T31 or better in 6 consecutive years, plus top 15 or better in 3 of the 4. 85th percentile putter from within 15 feet. I love that at Augusta. It's a stat that I like to look at. My research says that it's important, so I've been citing it throughout the show. He is short off the tee. I get it, but he's not prohibitively short, and he's actually gained some distance at Augusta sort of over his long-term career. Not a ton, but he can still hit it when he needs to. So Henley, Theegala, top 20s, plus 160, drawing my attention right now.
I think both those make sense. No objection. I like getting exposure to Theegala as well, and Henley, but I'll get DFS exposure to Henley to kind of cut off that. I have one top 20 as well, and there are some downsides, some red flags here. It's on Denny McCarthy. He shortened to plus 230, but still a fine number. He was plus 240 earlier on. Still okay with that. The red flags for McCarthy are that he's not long off the tee, and he is also a debutant here at Augusta. First time playing here, but we've seen him do okay in majors in the past. Finished 20th at the US Open last year. And we talked before about how distance matters more than accuracy, but it's not everything. And McCarthy right now, approach through putting is playing really well. And the approach part is important because that wasn't always the case in McCarthy. He was kind of like a short game merchant who would just obliterate around the green and putting. But like the irons have been better for McCarthy recently. And I think that really does boost expectations for him quite a bit at a course like this, where you can make up ground in that fashion. Last week, like again, it wasn't that Patia collapsed. It was that McCarthy ran him down by playing really good golf. They were both like 8 shots clear of the field. So it was more an endorsement of McCarthy than it was a downside for Akshay. So I think with McCarthy, there's a lot of interest there. Again, plus 230, finish top 20 where I'm going with him. I do have a Xander bet as well. I'm going to go with Xander to finish inside the top 5. Like I said, I think that the 14-1 to win is totally fine too, but consistency with Xander is actually a plus. And I think that's what you're getting here at 3-1 to finish inside the top five. And we've seen him do this already at Augusta. He's done this twice, 2019 and 2022. Finished 10th here last year. He's finished top five in 3 of his past 4 events, including at the Players, which is a very tough field too. No live guys in that one, obviously, but still tough field, tough course. He's great around the green, which does help here. He's actually one of the best around the green players in the field over the past 6 months. Like not the top, but he's up there for sure. So I'll definitely take that. I prefer this slightly over the outright at 14-1, but honestly, pick your poison. You could do a partial unit on the top 5 and then put a partial unit on the win if you want some upside. Should he actually finish this whole thing off? But either way, I think exposure to Xander makes a lot of sense. So I'm going McCarthy top 20 plus 230, Xander top 5 3-1. Brandon has Henley and Thigala plus 160 for a top 20s as his 2 non-outrights for this week. We'll talk more betting. Talk about some more granular markets on tomorrow's covering the spread as well. First, though, let's transition talk some DFS for this weekend. As mentioned, kind of a fascinating dynamic for this week, given that Scheffler's salary is $13,000. So, Brandon, when you consider Scheffler's salary, consider the hot spots in the player pool this week in terms of areas you want to get to. Who are your loves for DFS on FanDuel at Augusta?
I love Scottie Scheffler in DFS on FanDuel for the Masters. I know the salary is $13,000, but you plug him in, you have $9,400 on average for your other 5 golfers. It is very doable. You can still get back up into the 10,000 range if you are open to a value that we both have as a like this week. You can do a lot. Are you doing this now?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Okay.
Denny McCarthy's salary is $7,200. If you put McCarthy with Scheffler, got $9,950 left. So you can still get in that range. It just kind of locks you into using McCarthy because I don't think there's anybody else down that low who grades that well. And you could do it without McCarthy. Like you could live in the upper 8s and the low 9s. That's okay too. But there's really only 2 kinds of rosters to build with Scheffler. That's not saying you can't use him, but that's a downside, at least in my eyes.
You can get to our guy Joaquin Niemann though.
You can. You sure can.
Without using McCarthy.
Okay, let's do that here. So if you go with Scheffler plus Niemann, 9,150 left, doable. Definitely can do that. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. So that's appealing for me. Scheffler, I have him basically twice as likely to win compared to anyone. I don't want to ignore that. I know that the salary's up there, but there are other potential options to build around. And you have your Matt Fitzpatrick's, your Niemann's, Sahith, and maybe you don't have Sahith quite in that tier or anything, but in the low 10,000 range, you have some star power still. Maybe guys who are in imperfect form, but guess what? Golf doesn't quite work that way where your form over the past month or 3 months or 50 rounds or whatever is just how you play. That's not how it works. Love what Jim's doing here, though.
It's Scheffler plus Schauffele plus Niemann and McCarthy. That leaves you with 9,250 left for 2 golfers. I will have a lineup that has these 4 guys in it somewhere.
It is interesting. Data Golf has 3 years of strokes gain data from Augusta. Scheffler is averaging 3.34 true strokes gained tee to green. That's wild. Only Hideki at a 2.92 is above a 2.6. I know the putting is potentially still an issue with Scheffler. I don't quite see it that way. He's putted pretty well, or at least neutral, since the switch for the most part. So the switch equipment to a mallet putter, if anyone doesn't know that. So I don't know how you go down to Jon Rahm and save 800 over Scheffler as like a primary decision. So for me, I love Scheffler. I also love Xander, and yes, you can play both Scottie and Xander together. You have $9,025 on average left for your other 4 golfers. Very doable, even if you don't go down into the 7,000 range. But we've talked Xander a ton. He is just the second best golfer in the field over most recent samples, and the salary being below 11,000, I get it. Xander doesn't win as much as his talent says he should. He's like always popular at majors. He's going to be popular this week, but I don't particularly care. only he and Scheffler are both top 10 in all 3 of the tee to green stats over the last 50 rounds. And only he, Scheffler, Victor Hovland, and Corey Connors are both top 10 are top 10 in both of the ball striking stats. So like what he's doing is really hard to replicate. The salary's frankly too low for me. So I think Xander's going to be just a core play for me. My third love this week is Russell Henley. Little bit of a risk, little bit of volatility for a golfer who does, or I guess not volatility, but not the most ideal process for a golfer who isn't long off the tee, but he's gained 2.3 yards per drive in his career at Augusta National, according to Data Golf. So it's just one of those kind of things where golfers can change what they do with driver depending on the course at this level. That's, I think, something that Henley is willing and able to do. So he is short, like long term against this field. I get it, but overall, he can kind of make things work at Augusta, and he is 30th in this field in strokes gained approach over the last 50 rounds, which sounds okay, whatever, but he's still gaining almost half a shot per round from approach. It's that this is a good field, and that's who he's being compared to. So just because he's like near the field average in terms of ranking doesn't mean that he's a completely neutral with approach. So I think Henley is, I know we're going to talk McCarthy in the like section, but Henley to me is the best play below 9,000 this week, and it's not particularly close to me.
Do you know where Russell Henley is in Data Golf's rankings? Like they have their own World Golf rankings, and these have the live guys in it, and like they're like, you know, Rahm's top 5, Neiman's 7th. So like they have the live guys in there. Do you want to guess where they have Henley right now?
I don't.
You don't want to guess, or you don't know?
No, I'm bad at guessing stuff.
I would say
I was gonna say probably 15th if you were asking me, but
Patrick Cantlay is 8th. Then it's Russell Henley, then Tyrrell Hatton, then Wyndham Clark, then Tommy Fleetwood. And all those guys are, well, Fleetwood's 93, but like all those guys are basically 10,000 this week. So no surprise. Russell Henley, also a core play for me. I agree with your assessment that he is pretty easily the top ranked guy below $9,000, $8,800. He finished 4th here last year, also top 20 in 2018 and 2017. So it's an event where around the green play matters more. He could do that well in addition to his irons, good putter. So I think that Henley makes a lot of sense. My other 2 core plays this week are going to be Xander Schauffele and Joaquin Niemann. That means that I don't have Scheffler as a core play, but it really does come down to just the salary. I think that for the reason that I have Xander and Niemann here is because I can get to them whether I go with Scheffler as my top guy or if I go elsewhere, which means they fit every single build and we be priorities for me in every single build. With Xander, again, it's a really good mid-tier, and he's a big part of why it's a good mid-tier. He's been top 10 at Augusta 3 separate times, 2 top 5s, ranked second behind Scottie and true strokes gained the past 6 months. So love Xander. Niemann at 10-4, obliterating the Live Tour, the DP World Tour, 2 Live wins since January 1st. He also won the Australian Open back in December. Just okay at the majors last year, but 16th at Augusta. So I think he makes a lot of sense. I did build that lineup with Scheffler, Schauffele, and Niemann. You can make that work, and I will do that. But I think the key thing for them is that they fit every single build this week, and they're guys I want to get to aggressively. So my 3 loves, Scheffler, Schauffele, Niemann. Is ruining me. The Schauffele, Niemann, and Henley, my core plays this week.
I got a question for you then.
Sure.
You're open to Scheffler for sure.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to downplay that.
Yeah.
But we both love Xander, love Niemann. I mean, he's not technically a love for me, but like process-wise fits everything. If you're not playing Scheffler, who's your highest salaried golfer in a lineup? Is it just Xander, or is it the tier that we
consider a lineup with Xander as your top guy? I think you'd also consider, like, why would I not consider John Rahm or Rory McIlroy? Like, from a production per dollar of salary perspective, are they going to be as good a process plays as Scottie Scheffler? No. Is there a non-zero chance that they beat Scottie Scheffler this weekend and are the better plays? Yes. So that's the reason I'm okay starting a lineup with Rahm or McIlroy. Probably not getting to Brooks. No on Spieth. No on Hideki. I would be okay with going Xander as my top guy. But like, I can almost guarantee you both Rahm and McIlroy will have much lower roster rates than Scottie Scheffler this week. So I feel like I'd be foolish to cross them off and not get there just because their win equity is a lot lower than Scheffler's this week.
Let me rephrase.
Okay.
You're building a lineup.
Uh-huh.
You do not want Scottie Scheffler in this particular lineup.
Uh-huh.
Does it have John Rahm or Rory McIlroy?
Like, you give
As
me
like,
one single entry lineup this week, I am giving very strong consideration to John Rahm.
Okay.
Like, I'm not saying I'm definitely going to do it, but I'm giving strong consideration. In our head-to-head, I'm using Scheffler.
Yeah.
No doubt.
So effectively, no, that's not true because you said you'd build a lineup with Xander. I was going to say effectively every one of your lineups is going to have Scheffler, Rahm, or Rory, but you said that's not the case. So it's more like your first.
I wouldn't be shocked if every one of them has one of those three.
Okay.
I'm receptive to starting with Xander, but that doesn't mean I'll do it.
Yeah, okay. I'm more likely to have Rahm or Rory than start with Xander because Xander's win equity to me is much higher than his salary. So I feel like
win equity is like 45%. What are you talking about?
I'd love it if you won.
Like, you put Xander and Neiman in the same lineup, you've got 117% win odds across two golfers. Like, why do you even bother filling out the rest?
That's true. And then you said 117%. If you add Scottie, it goes up to 118%. So
yeah, exactly. I suppose if you want to add the extra 1%, you can. But that's a little piggish of you. So, to each their own. Who are your likes for this week? Your secondary plays?
Neiman for me is a like. I think I'd probably get there in a main lineup because I might have a hard time getting to Xander, which is a really hard predicament to figure out. It's not so much Scottie plus 5 golfers at 10,000 or lower. It's more Scottie, and then what can I really do to get to Xander? And am I okay settling on Neiman? And I think I probably am, although I would love to find an extra 500. So it is going to be difficult. I built a lineup with a lot of names I like a ton and love with Scottie, and I get up to Neiman, and I'm like, I like this lineup, but I'd rather get to Xander, but I don't want to go down from anyone else because then I get into a lot of situations that I don't love. But for me with Neiman, there's still a level of unknown to the live golfers and majors, even though they've answered a lot of these questions. For Neiman specifically, is he going to be good at Augusta long term? Is he just now better than ever before? And so he's building on his Augusta form. I think there's still question marks there. He's more of a like than a true love for me at this salary. I also like the lad, Tommy Fleetwood. Talked about him, kind of lampshaded him in the betting section. I just can't quite get there. I want to see some numbers shift around, lengthen a little bit, but 9,300, that salary's not moving. I think he's in a great position at that salary. The expectations are basically zero because the salary is a true value salary at this rate. He's a positive in all 4 strokes gained stats, 15th in tee to green over the last 50 rounds. Putting is above average from within 15 feet. It's not amazing, but it is above average. My win simulation model is pretty into him. Again, I'd consider him at 50-1. Would like to see that tick down a little bit, but he's someone I got my eye on. A name we have not mentioned, Corey Connors. 9,100 is his salary. Same as Big P, Patrick Reed.
Stop calling him that. I can't. It takes me out so much.
He's killing it with the irons lately. He is one of those 4 names who's top 10.
You talking about Big P or Corey Connors?
If I'm talking good ball striking, I'm not talking Patrick Reed.
Yeah.
Connors is one of 4 names in the top 10 in both ball striking stats over the last 50 rounds, so strokes gained off the tee and strokes gained approach. He's gained strokes gained approach in 13 straight measured events. Putting is bad, 17th percentile in 2024 from within 15 feet. Missed the cut here last year, but had 3 straight top 10s at Augusta prior. He was a name that was running hot earlier this year, a name that we always look at Augusta. The salary's there, expectations, again, pretty much low. Any thoughts on Connors?
Yeah, my thought is, why didn't I have Corey Connors in my player picks? Oh, it's the putting. That's why.
Yeah,
Okay, I figured it out.
it's
Yeah,
it's an issue, but
yeah. I mean, he's been a bad putter his entire life. Like, since he walked out the crib. Do people walk out of the crib or they crawl? Since he crawled out of the crib, he's been a bad putter. But like, he still had 3 straight top tens at Augusta. So maybe I should chill out a little bit, but that's the reason why I wasn't higher.
well, that's the reason that he's a like for me and not a love.
Fair
But that
enough.
salary goes a
Fair
long
enough.
way if you're trying
Yep.
to get to Scottie Scheffler or like Rom and Xander kind of a thing. Like even he could be 95, and I'd still probably be a little bit interested in him.
That's
So
fair.
I think that's appealing. And then I also have Danny McCarthy as a like. 7,200 opens up a lot. Very short game driven. I understand it. But 87th percentile putter from within 15 feet. And the irons are like average long term. They can go up and down in certain weeks, but like average irons are way different than bad irons. So if I want to get different, if I want to experiment with like a Scotty Rom lineup, I know I'd have to tie it to Denny McCarthy, but uh it's something to think about.
Yeah, I think he makes a lot of sense. I've also got McCarthy as a like for me too. Again, $7,200 just goes a long way. I want to be careful to make sure I don't have every Scotty lineup tied to McCarthy, because I think McCarthy, after that runner up last week, is
Mm-hmm.
going to pop quite a bit for people. So if you go with the Scotty McCarthy pairing, you're just kind of swimming with the rest of the group, and I don't really want to do that personally. So I want to make sure I split up. Have McCarthy without Scheffler, have Scheffler without McCarthy. I want to be cognizant of that to make sure I don't have the exact same build as everyone else. But I do like McCarthy quite a bit at 72 for this week. I got Matt Fitzpatrick in this range, $9,900. Guy we both like from a betting perspective at 40-1, but also like just pretty steady relative to this salary. It's a good range. I like Bryson here. So I think it's a good range overall. But again, irons seem to be getting back up a bit, which is good. Top tens at the Valero and the Players. Putting has always been good. That's a plus for him. Distance is better now than it was. He's been good at Augusta even when he was super, super young, and he may fit the course better now than he did back in the day since he's at a distance. So I do like Fitzpatrick quite a bit at 99. Final secondary play for me, I think, is gonna be Rom, just because again, I feel like he's not going to be as popular as he should be. Like you alluded to Rom's live results in the course history section. You talked about, top 8, which is fine, but not like exploding. But you think about like this is very narrative driven. So like if you're like, no, Jim, shut up, that's totally okay.
No, Jim, shut up.
Okay,
Whatever it
fair
is.
enough. I shouldn't give you that opening. But like, think about John Rahm's mentality. John Rahm, when there's like weird music playing in a 54 hole event, is not going to be in killer mode. John Rahm this week is going to be in killer mode. And so Scotty's a better process play, which is why I'd rather use him for a head to head. But if I'm going like one single entry dart for a tournament, I'm leaning towards Rahm right now. I'm not crossing off Rory for that discussion just because I think people who, if you watch Full Swing, you saw him at Sakut at Augusta last year, looked pretty bad. He had a weird stretch this year where he was just fine for a long time. So I don't think we're going to see a heavy roster rate on Rory. So honestly, I'm going to have all three between Scotty, Rahm, and Rory at some point. But if you give me one lineup, I kind of lean towards Rahm just because golf is volatile. Scheffler had some weird putts in Texas that maybe they stick in his mind. Maybe the putting regresses a bit from where it has been the past 3 weeks. I don't know. And the salary is quite high. So leaning towards Rahm if I have one single entry lineup as of right now. We'll see.
You do you. According to Kyle Porter from CBS on Twitter, he's great golf writer, journalist, etc. He mentioned that Rahm's, to quote his tweet, Rahm is clearly bothered by all the live stuff, deep size, curt answers, truly getting close to the "I've made a huge mistake" .gif territory. I also do think that John Rahm shows up locked in, which for someone like Rahm, is a plus. Someone like Rory, I think he can get into his own head too much. So
Totally.
between the two, I do like Rom.
And I think that like for Rory, it's a lot of pressure of like, carrying the PGA Tour banner. Rom's not carrying the Live Tour banner. He's just like PO'd. Like, and like I feel like there's a very different classification for it.
We're all trying to figure out what happened.
Yep. Okay. Win picks for this week. You're going Xander, I assume?
I'm absolutely going Xander at 14-1.
So you got Xander 14-1. And then I'm assuming that your dilemma after that is between Neiman and Fitzpatrick. How are you viewing those two? Is it between those two, or is there someone else you're looking at too?
I was also thinking about like Tommy,
Okay.
Fleetwood, Sahith. I think like the value says Fitz. My heart says Neiman. I think I'm gonna stick with. I think I'm gonna stick with Neiman though.
Yeah.
I almost pulled a Jim, and I was like, I mean, Victor Hovland's 35-1. We thought this was like,
Oh wow.
that this is going to be the guy who overtakes Scottie. That did not last very long, which is a testament to Scheffler for like how
Sure.
good he's been for how long.
Sure.
But I think I have to go Neiman.
Okay, so you have Neiman 28 and Xander at 14.
Yeah.
I was hoping you would take Fitzpatrick because I kind of want a Neiman, but I can't. I don't like him enough to like overlap with you. So I'm gonna go Fitzpatrick at 40-1. I do prefer Neiman. Like if you force me to have only one outright for this event, it would be on Joaquin Neiman.
Mm-hmm.
So I would go that way. But for the sake of the game, I'll go Fitzpatrick. So Fitzpatrick 40-1, and we're going with the killer. John Rahm 11-1 will be my other outright for this week. Again, what I talked about before with Rahm is that he has unknowns in the positive sense. There's a lot of volatility there because we have not seen him in what he would view, I think, to be a legitimate. Well, he'd said flat out like it should be 72 holes and live. So like he said it's not legitimate. So like I'm not speaking for him. He said it himself. It's him in a legitimate event where he can be locked in and be killer Rahm, the guy who was winning tournaments left and right last year, like only a year ago. And I don't think it's lost that form just because we haven't seen it on the PGA Tour recently. I'm going to go with John Rahm. So back to back defending champ, John Rahm 11-1, Matt Fitzpatrick 40-1 for me. You've got Xander Schauffele 14-1, Joaquin Neiman 28. And again, I would have taken Neiman had you not, just because I think that he truly is my favorite guy for outrights for this week. Any final thoughts for you before we transition to tomorrow's show and talk more betting over Uncovering the Spread?
Couple things. One, to clarify, at the end of the show, we have a season-long tally where we pick two. We just got to do a good job of clarifying. We had a whole betting section for the week of where we think the best value is. Jim and I do a head-to-head against one another. So basically, Jim thinks John Rahm's a good bet for our game, like the win probabilities there. Not that he would bet him himself.
I'm thinking about it. Like, you give me some kind of like odds boost, I might take Rahm at some point. I have not yet, but if you give me an odds boost, which I'm sure I'll get an offer for somewhere in the ether. Actually, I think, does FanDuel have a 30% boost? Yeah, 30% profit boost at FanDuel Sportsbook for the Masters. So there you go. Maybe you want to use that boost on someone with higher win odds than, a Fitzpatrick or a Neiman. I think Rahm's okay for that. So there you go. Company guy.
Yes. Also check out FanDuel Research. Zach Bussier doing a lot of additional golf coverage for the Masters this week. Wanted to shout that out. We'll be back on Wednesday with some more detailed dives into betting in different betting markets at FanDuel Sportsbook. And as always, the caveat I got to throw out for majors, a lot of names to consider. Jim and I have our processes. You could say.
Process, yeah.
But you might like Rory a ton, or you might like Brooks or Spieth, and I don't think that's wrong in any sense. You can be different without being silly this week, and so I think that's always my main takeaway when it comes to major week.
Absolutely. Trust your own process, and that's the way you want to go, as always. That is all we have here for today. But as mentioned, we are back once again tomorrow, going more in depth on the betting side of things on the Covering the Spread podcast feed that will also be up on the FanDuel YouTube page and FanDuel TV Plus. If you like what you heard on this show, though, we are here every Tuesday breaking down that week's PGA Tour event, talking betting and DFS. So make sure you're subscribed to the FanDuel Research podcast feed. We also got NBA podcasts for the rest of this week till the regular season is done with Tom Vecchio, MLB shows with myself, breaking down favorite strikeout and home run props along with DFS plays, UFC via Austin Slade, and of course, PGA as well. Search for FanDuel Research Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Hit subscribe, and if you like what you hear, leave us a 5-star rating as well. Brandon, if people have questions for you on Twitter, where can they find you there? Or can they not find you because you did the John Cena thing, which I totally understood the reference to because I am a wrestling boy who understands it all.
You can see me. John Cena actually follows me on Twitter, which is cool.
Along with 1.5 million other people, yes.
Hey, he said he really does control that account and follows. First of all, his Instagram is great. It's a whole different side of John Cena.
I did the one wrestling clip I showed my wife from Sunday was him running out in jorts because he ran like a dad. So that was the one clip I showed her.
That was sick. They waited just long enough.
It was cool, but the running was weird. He did run like a dad. Is he a dad? I don't even know.
That was like a pretty elevated ramp.
He ran like a dad.
Well, get out of here.
He's much faster than me. He could beat the daylights out of me. And so full respect to him, but the form was interesting. I will not be sending clips of me running to John Cena. I don't want to get roasted.
I'll DM him. I think
I'm a microphone warrior. We're not actually getting out from behind the mic here.
Gdula 13 at Gdula 13 GDULA13.
And I'm on Twitter at Jim Sonis. You can also follow FanDuel Research on Twitter at FanDuel Research. Want to thank you all for tuning in for today. Good luck to you with your bets and DFS lineups. We'll talk to you once again tomorrow on the Covering the Spread feed. Talk more betting for the Masters. This has been the Heat Check right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.